There are things about you that everyone around you has already figured out, and you are the only person in the room who doesn't know it yet. Not your secrets, not your past. Something quieter than that. Something you hand over in the first 90 seconds of almost any interaction. Your buttons, your pressure points, the exact places where a little bit of pressure gets a very predictable reaction out of you. People have been reading this off you for years. Family members who know exactly which comment will make you go quiet. Co-workers who know exactly which tone will make you defensive. That one friend who always seems to know precisely what to say to get you rattled without even trying very hard. None of them ever needed your permission for this. You handed it to them for free, one reaction at a time, without ever realizing there was a cost attached. Nobody ever taught you this was happening, and that's really the problem here. Not that you're weak, not that you're too sensitive, not that something is fundamentally wrong with the way you're built. You were taught, probably since childhood, that being open and expressive and easy to read was a virtue, a sign of honesty, something to be proud of, and nobody ever mentioned that it was also a blueprint, a set of instructions you were quietly handing out for free to anyone patient enough to study you long enough to notice the pattern. Somewhere out there is a different kind of person, and you have met one. Someone who can make a room go quiet without raising their voice. Someone people learn almost instinctively, not to provoke twice, and the reason has nothing to do with how loud they can get or how intimidating they look standing in a doorway. It has to do with 7 specific things they do, or more precisely, 7 specific things they have trained themselves never to do, that make them almost impossible to read, and by extension, almost impossible to safely test. You're about to learn all 7, one at a time. And I want to be honest with you before we start, because some of what's coming will feel obvious the moment you hear it, and deeply uncomfortable in the exact same breath, because you will recognize, almost immediately, every place in your own life where you've done the opposite without ever noticing. Stay with that discomfort all the way through, because the 7th one, the very last one, decides something that matters more than the other 6 combined. Whether the people around you end up quietly wary of crossing you, or quietly certain that they still can. Here's the first one, and it's the one almost everyone fails within seconds of being tested, without ever realizing the test even happened. 1. You notice everything and confirm nothing. Picture this. You're at a dinner, or a work lunch, or sitting in someone's living room, and a person across from you says something that doesn't quite add up. A small contradiction, a detail that doesn't match what they told you last month, a slip they clearly didn't mean to make, and your face does something before your brain even decides to let it. An eyebrow moves, your mouth tightens slightly. Maybe you even say something small like, "Wait, didn't you say it was different last time?" And it feels like nothing. It feels almost like honesty, catching someone in a small inconsistency and just naming it out loud. But look at what that actually does. It hands the other person a live readout of exactly what you're tracking, and the moment they know what you noticed, they simply get better at hiding that particular thing from you the next time, and you've taught them something valuable for free. The person who genuinely unsettles a room does the opposite, and it isn't about gritting your teeth and holding back what you want to say. That's not what's happening at all. It's closer to never building the reaction in the first place. Training yourself to log what you notice and give absolutely nothing back in return. No eyebrow, no small correction, no knowing glance across the table. You let the contradiction pass in complete silence while quietly filing it away somewhere permanent. And that single habit alone is enough to make people careful around you in a way they can't fully articulate, even to themselves. There's a reason interrogators are trained never to react the second a suspect tells a lie, and it has nothing to do with politeness. The reaction itself is data, telling the liar precisely which parts worked and which parts need adjusting before the next attempt, and withholding that reaction entirely denies them the one feedback loop they're unconsciously depending on to read you back. This is exactly where the wariness starts to take root in people. Quietly, in the specific moment they realize you've been watching the whole time and have never once shown them what you actually saw. And from that point forward, they start choosing their words around you with a little more care than they'd ever admit to. Now the second one. And this changes something about how every disagreement in your life actually plays out from here forward. 2. You let questions do the work statements cannot. Every statement you make is a target painted directly onto your own position. So say, I think we should handle it this way in a meeting, and you've just handed the room a fixed point to either agree with, argue against, or quietly resent later. And either way, you've spent your leverage before you actually needed to. Watch how the people who move through disagreement without ever losing ground tend to operate. They rarely make declarations at all, they ask. And the questions they ask are never quite as innocent as they sound in the moment. Notice the difference between telling someone that plan is going to fail and instead asking what happens if the timeline slips by 2 weeks. The first one is a wall, something to push directly against, something that turns the room into a fight over who's right, while the second one is a door, and it forces the other person to walk through it themselves, arriving at your exact concern, using their own reasoning. So when it finally lands, it feels like their discovery instead of your criticism, and there's nothing left over for them to resent, because technically, you never actually said anything. This isn't manipulation in the cartoonish sense people picture when they hear that word. Whispered suggestions and puppet strings. It's quieter and far more deliberate than that. It's guiding a conclusion without ever handing it over directly, asking yourself, before any conversation that actually matters, whose conclusion you need someone to land on, and then building the exact question that walks them there without leaving a single fingerprint of yours on the outcome. A person who has stopped making statements and started asking the right questions instead becomes almost impossible to pin down in an argument, and impossible to pin down is exactly the quality that keeps people just a little bit careful about getting things wrong around you. Sit with that one for a second before we keep going, because most people will hear it and never actually apply it. 3. You never explain where you have been somewhere. In most people, there's a strange belief that unavailability requires justification, that if you went quiet for 2 days or missed something or simply weren't reachable, you owe someone an account of your time, and here's what actually happens next. You rush to supply that account before anyone even asks for it, because the discomfort of being questioned feels heavier than the cost of just over-explaining yourself. Think about the last group chat where someone disappeared for a day after an argument and then came back with 3 paragraphs explaining exactly why, apologizing for the silence itself, as though silence were a debt owed to everyone watching. And notice how that person's standing in the group quietly shifted the moment those paragraphs landed, not because anyone demanded them, but because they were offered. Explanation given before it's requested is a form of submission, and not because honesty is weak, but because volunteering your whereabouts before anyone asks signals that you believe you're accountable to the person receiving it, and people calibrate exactly how much weight you carry based on how much you seem to feel that need to account for yourself. Now picture the opposite version of that same group chat moment. Someone goes quiet for 2 days after a disagreement and simply returns without a single word of explanation, picks the conversation back up exactly where it makes sense to, offers nothing, and something about the room recalibrates around them instead, because that person re-entered as an equal, while the over-explainer re-entered as someone who had already given something away before a single demand was ever made. This isn't permission to vanish on people who genuinely deserve better from you. It's narrower than that. Most explanations nobody actually asked for come out of a private anxiety, and anxiety-driven disclosure is one of the clearest signals a manipulator learns to watch for in someone, because it shows them exactly where your need for approval lives, exactly where the fear of being misread controls what you do next. The moment you stop supplying unrequested justification, something shifts in how people speak to you, quietly but permanently, because you've stopped signaling that their opinion of your time comes with a vote attached to it. 4. You keep a private record and let it decide who gets close. There's an uncomfortable asymmetry in how most people run their relationships. They remember slights vividly and forget kindness almost immediately, and they extend the exact same warmth to everyone in their orbit, regardless of how those people have actually behaved toward them over time, because staying consistent feels like the moral thing to do. But consistency toward people who have been consistently unreliable isn't virtue. It's a door left open for anyone willing to walk through it without ever paying a price. And the people closest to you already sense, whether they'd ever say it out loud or not, exactly how far that door swings. Think about a friend who cancels on you 3 separate times whenever it's inconvenient for them, always with a reasonable excuse, and then shows up right on time the one week they need something from you, a favor, a ride, a place to stay. And now think about a different friend who has shown up consistently, even in the months when showing up cost them something real: sleep, money, their own plans rearranged. Most people extend both of these friends the exact same access to their time, their trust, their attention, and this is precisely the behavior that quietly gets exploited over and over, because nothing about your treatment of either friend has ever been tied to how they've actually behaved. The fourth behavior is maintaining a private, unspoken record across time, not out of vengeance, not as a grudge you're nursing, but out of accuracy. Tracking who has shown up when it genuinely cost them something and who has only ever shown up when it was free, and letting that record quietly determine access over months and years, without a single conversation about it ever happening. The friend who's proven something gets more of you without ever being told why. The friend who hasn't slowly finds doors closing that they can't quite trace back to a single moment. No argument, no confrontation, just a gradual redirection of your time and energy toward the people who've actually earned it. Here's the part that should genuinely sit with you for a moment, because it's different from what's coming later in this list. This behavior isn't about how you react in the instant someone crosses you. That's a separate thing entirely, and we'll get to it. This one is slower than that. It's the long, quiet record that runs in the background of every relationship you have, and it's the not knowing, on the other person's part, exactly how long that record lasts, or how far back it reaches. That keeps people honest with you in ways that confrontation never quite manages to. Quick pause here, because this next one is the kind of thing that sounds easy to agree with and is genuinely hard to live inside of. 5. You let people underestimate what you're actually capable of. Almost everyone has been taught to advertise their competence. Make sure people know exactly what you can do, what you've accomplished, what you're capable of if you're ever pushed into a corner, because visibility feels like the only real path to being taken seriously in a room full of other people fighting for the same attention. But there's a cost to full visibility that almost nobody sits down and actually calculates. The moment someone fully understands your capability, they also understand precisely how much effort it will take to work around you, exactly where your ceiling sits, and exactly how to plan a strategy that avoids ever having to test you directly. Imagine sitting in a meeting where a colleague explains a technical problem slowly, a little condescendingly, clearly assuming you don't have the background to follow it, and you let them. You nod. You ask a basic question instead of correcting their assumption on the spot, and 6 months later, when that same problem resurfaces and you're the only person in the building who actually understands how to fix it, watch what happens to the room in that exact moment. Because the shock isn't that you knew the answer. The shock is realizing how wrong they'd been about you for 6 straight months without ever once suspecting it. The fifth behavior asks you to resist the urge to correct every one of those underestimations as they happen, to let people assume less of you in the moments where it costs you nothing to let them, because every time someone underestimates you and later discovers they were wrong, that discovery lands with far more force than it ever would have if you'd simply corrected them from the start. Surprise is one of the only advantages in any relationship or negotiation that can't be purchased back once it's already been spent. And capability revealed too early stops being an advantage the instant it becomes information the other side gets to quietly plan their next move around. This is genuinely uncomfortable to live inside of, because it means sitting in rooms, sometimes for a long stretch of time, where people assume less of you than is actually true, feeling that friction and choosing not to correct it, resisting a very human urge for as long as it takes. And the people who can actually tolerate that discomfort are the same people who, when they finally act, produce something closer to real unease in a room than simple surprise, because everyone realizes, all at once, that whatever they'd calculated about your limits had already been wrong for a while. And if that calculation was wrong, they start quietly wondering what else they've gotten wrong about you too. 6. You let what happens next speak instead of your voice in the moment. This one is different from the private record we talked about earlier. That one was slow and ran in the background across months. This one is about the exact moment someone crosses you, the specific instant of betrayal itself, and what you do with your voice. Right then, because anger in that moment is loud, and loud things are easy to dismiss later, easy to wait out, easy to explain away afterward as someone simply having a rough day. And this is exactly why people who lean on anger to enforce their boundaries tend to get taken less seriously over time, not more. Because anger without any lasting consequence quietly teaches everyone around you that the line can be crossed again, as long as they're willing to sit through a little noise afterward. Picture the exact moment someone betrays your trust. Maybe a colleague takes credit for something you built. Maybe a partner lies about something that actually matters. And picture two completely different responses to that same moment. One person raises their voice right there, explains in detail exactly how hurt and furious they are, and within a matter of days, the relationship has mostly returned to where it was before, largely unchanged, because the anger, however real it was, never actually cost the other person anything beyond a few uncomfortable minutes. The other person says almost nothing in that exact moment, absorbs it with a stillness that unsettles everyone watching, and then, over the following weeks, quietly and permanently adjusts what that person has access to. Less information, less proximity, less of the trust that used to be automatic, without a single announcement that anything has shifted at all. And this second person is remembered far longer and feared far more, because what follows their silence can actually be measured and felt for a long time afterward. This is the exact moment where real unease stops being about what you might say out loud and starts being about what you might quietly decide, permanently, without ever raising your voice to announce the decision. And a person known to respond to betrayal this way, with calm, certain structural consequence, rather than a performance of hurt feelings, becomes someone whose boundaries are treated as genuinely real, not because they're frightening in the heated moment itself, but because everyone around them has learned, through watching it happen more than once, that crossing them costs something that never quite gets given back. We're at the last one now, and everything before this was really just preparation for it, because this is the behavior that actually decides which version of you the people in your life end up dealing with. 7. You let people leave the room, still guessing about what you actually think. Most conversations end with both people knowing exactly where the other one stands. And in most ordinary relationships, this genuinely feels like connection, like resolution, like the whole point of talking to someone in the first place. But in any situation involving competition, negotiation, a job interview, a difficult conversation with someone whose interests don't fully line up with yours, being completely understood isn't intimacy at all. It's exposure. And it hands the other side a finished map instead of a puzzle they still have to sit with and work through on their own. Think about the last time you left a conversation, a date, a negotiation, an interview, and the other person walked away with absolutely no doubt about exactly where you stood on everything. Every opinion fully stated, every card shown. And now think about the rare times you've walked away from someone else's conversation still turning it over in your head hours later, still not entirely sure what they actually thought about you, and notice which of those two people you kept thinking about longer. The final behavior is choosing, on purpose, to leave certain rooms without confirming your full position, offering enough that the conversation feels complete without ever offering everything. So the other person walks away, holding a working theory of you instead of a certainty they can just file away and stop thinking about. This is hard to actually practice, because most people crave the relief of being fully known. Someone nodding along and saying, "I understand exactly what you mean," but that relief is precisely what gets traded away. in the moments that matter most, for something far more durable. The quiet, ongoing, low-grade unease of someone who still hasn't fully worked out who you are. A person who can be completely read can be completely managed. A person who can't be fully read forces everyone around them to stay careful indefinitely. Because that's exactly what an unresolved question does inside a mind that hasn't found its answer yet. And this isn't the same as dishonesty, and it isn't coldness toward the people who've genuinely earned your openness over years. It's simply the recognition that some rooms were never owed your full interior in the first place, and the people who understand that distinction move through the world in a way the fully transparent never quite manage to. Unread, unpredictable, and, whether they ever intended it or not, someone people think twice about testing. None of these 7 behaviors require you to become someone colder or crueler than you already are. They only ask you to stop giving away, freely and constantly, the exact things that make you predictable and predictability. More than weakness, more than kindness, more than any personality trait people spend years in therapy trying to fix, is the actual currency that keeps getting spent against you every single day, usually without you noticing the transaction ever happened. Go back to the very beginning of this, to the person who already knows exactly which reaction to pull out of you, whichever family member, coworker, or friend came to mind when you first heard that. The discomfort you felt in that moment, realizing how readable you've actually been all this time. That same discomfort is precisely what other people are about to start feeling around you instead, once you stop handing yourself away, one reaction at a time. So here's the question worth sitting with after this ends. And it isn't going to feel comfortable. Which of the people currently closest to you have only ever had access to you because you never once stopped explaining yourself to them?